Good afternoon, everyone. I hope the lunch treated you well, and I'll try to earn the next few minutes. I'm Moksha Chawla, Director at Pacific Life. I'm focused on the workflow systems, especially for new business underwriting. I am joined here by my senior architects, John and Rama here. So here's the premise. Someone emails you a document, and they say it's just one PDF. Well, what they sent you is a bundle of documents, multiple people, mixed formats, and now the workflow has to pretend that it's all normal. What we would like to showcase today is how do we turn that chaos into an intelligent, predictable document management using Appian automation and AI in a way the developers can reuse and the business can trust. So there are so many ways that a doc workflow falls apart. I'm going to be hitting on the top few for sure. First of all, the intake is chaos. Mixed sources, messy formats, inconsistent names, and bundles that do not match the workflow model. In a regulated industry like ours, ambiguity becomes a risk. You misclassify once, and you get rework. You get missed requirements. Or worse, you get compliance exposure. And that is often discovered very late in the game. The automation and manual coexistence, we all had this. This is where it all starts to fall apart. When the systems cannot go end to end, it's the humans that become the glue. They split, they rename, they rekey, they reconcile, they're always there, and that's the human in the middle problem. And that all collapses at scale. And last, cases are never one document. They're never single documents. They're bundles of apps, evidences, letters, emails, all kind of crazy correspondences that we have. It keeps becoming a moving target. And the brittle workflows are the ones that don't know how to survive in that world. And so that's our failure pattern, right? It's the chaos, the risk, the human glue, the moving targets. But how do we flip it into what we learn and reuse? This is where we have practical takeaways. This is not going to be a theory session. There's going to be a demo, but we don't have labs. We don't have you guys on your laptops going through stuff. We want to talk through what were our 4 levels on this one. First one is the classification strategy. We wanted to treat classification as the front door so that everything downstream gets simpler. We only extract what we want that can move the workflow forward and map it cleanly into records. This is the big one, right? Unknown documents happen. We all get it. We all see it all the time. So we designed a path that was intentional for that instead of letting it break the flow. And then we had to make sure that we minimize the brittle glue code and keep the responsibilities separate so that this can scale and evolve safely. And of course, it comes with a lot of constraints as well. And these are some of the constraints that we'll talk about that will separate a conference demo from what it shows up as in production. We all know that document variability is a guarantee. We will always get it. You have to make sure that you don't treat it as a challenge, but that's where the opportunity lies. The accuracy and compliance, these are non-negotiables. Again, I would say this one more time, we are from insurance industry, which is highly regulated. You want to make sure that does become your non-negotiable. Haven't we all talked about the transparency for AI? We always have to make sure that people, as well as sometimes the system, understands what it's doing and why. And all of that forces the architecture. These are not preferences, so architecture has to align with that as well. And a good architecture also then becomes a constraint to make sure our workflow are great downstreams. And this is exactly why we keep coming back to one principle. AI should enable the workflow. It should not run the business. So why does it matter? In our business line, the intake is lumpy. The volume, it arrives in batches, and it creates multi-week setup backlogs. Historically, it's been fully manual and thus capacity constrained. The impact of the solution has been where the processing time per life goes from 60 minutes to 5 minutes because the workflow does the mechanical work. And those 5 minutes are only left for human in the review. This releases thousands of hours annually back into the business. The backlog compresses from weeks into real time. The unit cost drops, and the risk drops through standardization and traceability. Has anybody ever been able to quantify the measurable business impact that it has on the user experience? This is the one that's out there, right? This is where we have taken in production weeks to set up that lumpy batch. Now it's down to minutes. So now that we've framed the failure pattern, the constraints, the value, let's get into the part that you actually came for, the technical design and pipeline. And at this point, somebody's thinking, might as well say here, okay, so cool, you've trained a model and everything worked, right? That's not what happened. What mattered was architecture, where AI lives, what it's allowed to access, and what it's not allowed to touch. John is going to walk you through the technical backbone, the document pipeline, and how we made it predictable, testable, and production ready. John, take it away.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. I'm gonna get this guy going. Okay, hi everyone. In the life insurance industry, the most important process in the new business and underwriting flow, I'll call it, is, in my opinion, applications, application intake, and application setup. Throughout the years, we've been able to automate portions of this process. Technology changes. I can remember and having people enter applications on the mainframe, 3270s. We've gotten OCR, workflows, and even now cloud. But none of those processes really managed the real issue, and that's documents are hard to automate. What we want to show today is really how we took a limiter, which is documents, as Mokshit was talking about, and show how we changed that into an enabler. So after Appian World 2025, we sat in Randy's here, we sat in his session for a DevCon session for DocCenter. We knew immediately that this was a solution that we could harness at Pacific Life. So when we got back, we deployed it. I think it was 2.7. And we started playing with those classification and extraction models. And it wasn't too long after that when the business came to us and presented to us the use case that Mokshit is talking about. And that's receiving these large packets from producers and new business case managers having to be bogged down with breaking them up, literally going into Adobe, saving them off, naming them, entering the data into the application, and then uploading those documents to the workflow. We took this use case then to our generative AI committee. This was a steering committee set up to really give Pacific Life guardrails on how to introduce AI across the enterprise. It didn't take long for us to get approval because the architecture of Appian itself, you'll always hear them talking about keeping your data within the compliance boundaries. And we felt confident, and the committee felt confident that this solution didn't share our data with the models so they could be trained on our company data. And so we got fast approval, and that is where we started to build out the actual architecture. One of the biggest decisions you would think you would have to make is how do you separate AI from the workflow itself? And by using DocCenter, that decision was really easy because DocCenter owns it. DocCenter owns the document intelligence, the classification, the extraction, and the sorry, I always forget what that part is. The confidence scoring. Sorry about that. And the workflow controls the orchestration. It controls the business rules. the SLAs, and the exception handling. And why this approach we feel scales safely is because AI accelerates the work. It doesn't control the business. So this slide is, I just put this in here because this is what I used at the Gen AI steering committee, and it really shows just a basic conceptual design of a pipeline. You're ingesting documents, you're breaking them up, you're classifying them, you're extracting data, and you're building records. That's simply what it is. And you have the human in the loop. We have new business case managers checking documents that have fallen out of either a classification or extraction process. Pretty simple. Now, if we could pause it here for just a second, Veronica. We're going to get into the demo. I just wanted to do a quick setup for some terms we use at Pacific Life for the multi-life business. So a case is Arthur's Electric. So the idea is we have a company that wants to provide corporate-sponsored or corporate-owned life insurance to their employees. A block, you'll hear me talk about blocks. Blocks are basically just a group of proposed insureds that are going to move through the actual new business and underwriting process together. We kind of think about it as batching. The producers are sending in batches of applications, and we group them together. And participants are the individual proposed insureds. We can start the demo then, Veronica, thank you. So what we're looking at here is all of our applications come in from producers via email. And I simulate it here with an email inbox. The new business case manager is basically going to monitor this. They're going to get an email from a producer, and I'm going to show you this. It's just a sample combined document that we used for our UAT testing. And so if you imagine the new business case manager gets these every day and has to break this down. This one is one person. It's 5 pages of an application, 5 pages of a DocuSign form, 20 pages for an illustration, and I won't go through all the illustration pages here. And last but not least, a state-required replacement form. So they would typically have to break that all up. With our process, they're not going to be even going into the email. They can actually drop the entire email into the pipeline. We added at the case level just a record action, a basic action to upload. But first I'll show you that no tricks up the sleeve here, that nothing's here, nothing up this sleeve. Blocks, participant documents, requirements, and the document pipeline are all empty. And basically, they start off with a shell case to add blocks and participants to. So as a new business case manager, I'm going to drag the email that I got from the producer and drop it into the pipeline. We're going to do the virus scan. That always happens on an upload. And we'll click Submit. And there it goes. This should be the easiest thing that a new business case manager does all day. So we can see that the document pipeline has started. And this is really just visibility so the new business case manager knows when to come back and start doing some checkout. So could we pause it here, Veronica, for just a second? Here's the main pipeline process modeling. What we just saw happen, so a lot of things are happening. The first thing is we detected it was an email, so we're going to go into a sub-process. We're going to detach all of the attachments and feed those back into the pipeline. We're also in there capturing email metadata. And we're doing that for a future enhancement where, as part of the new business case manager's reconciliation process, we're going to be able to track by case what emails came in for that case. So they can come back in, make sure the number of attachments that got processed match up with what is showing in the pipeline. The next thing is you heard Moksha talking about us separating these documents. So it might seem like counterproductive, but what we end up doing, because we don't understand how many documents we're getting at this point, we don't know if they uploaded multiple combined PDFs. So what we're going to do is we're going to smush them all together. And the reason for that is we need to then extract every single page out of that and feed it into a classification loop. So Veronica, if you'll let it run. So what you'll see it drop down after it's done all this, we're going to drop into a classification loop, and that is where DocCenter takes over. I'm going to refresh here a couple times, and it's in the classification. This is DocGen now doing DocCenter doing its work. So it's classifying every single page. So let's flip over to the classification model. Could you pause it here, Veronica, for just a second here? So this is our classification model. We had talked with the business about starting small, 6 forms. You can see I have more than 6 forms on here. And that came through training the model. There were times, and you can see some of the descriptions are more verbose than the others. And that basically, the descriptions become the prompt that is being passed to the model. So the idea is you only have so much you can build a prompt with. And what I discovered during the classification training is that it was almost easier to, if one of my forms that I was feeding in that were unknown at that time, we're not going to classify it, was thinking it was something else, a false positive, and it came back with 80%, it's pretty clear this is an application when it really wasn't. It was easier for me to just add the form and tell the model, this is really what you are, and then it wouldn't get that answer wrong anymore. It was really quite incredible to watch how it was learning the process and learning the different forms. These category names have a direct relationship to our doc types. We use FileNet for our document repository. So you have to have a document type along with your file, that document, and you're pushing up to FileNet. So there's a direct relationship. And so that gives us traceability from FileNet to our classification model. Veronica? Thank you. And so that's what my cursor is going through right now. Narrating, we're looking down this line and the expanded prompts. And after this, we're going to jump back into the process model, the pipeline, and see if it's done cooking. Can we pause it right here? This will probably be the last pause, Veronica. Thank you. So what you saw here is the looping process. We're going through, we're classifying the page. We're going to map it. There is a check in here. I'm kind of putting a safety net in here to be able to, if the classification model comes back, there is a category in that model called none. So it didn't recognize it. So if I get no doc type back, we are doing just a simple PDF text retrieval, smart service, right? We're grabbing off what I would say is probably 6 regex patterns that I'm using to find form numbers. And then we have a cross-reference table of form numbers and doc types. It's really just a safety net because we really didn't want the new business case managers having to get a blob of documents parked somewhere that they had to go in and identify it. So we do our best. Classification model, safety net is like workflow in the loop, right? And then what you're going to see is after all the pages have been classified with a doc type, we're going to group those PDFs. To keep the memory footprint of this process modeling small, I'm not dealing with documents after this. Basically, we have a doc type, and we're mapping the Appian doc ID to it. And so I create a huge a map with every single page has a doc type and their Appian doc ID. Those get grouped together. One caveat. Applications will always surface to the top. We sort those first because it's the only synchronous process in this pipeline because we have to use applications to build a participant, and you can't attach a document to nobody. So the idea is if applications came into the packet, we're going to build those first, and then everything else, you can let it run, Veronica, thank you. Everything else is asynchronous. So you see we have an application in the packet. We're going to hop over there, and you can see we're going to extract data, map it, and then this is where we're building our records, building participants, requirements. We're renaming the document. And so we come back here, and we'll quickly refresh, and you see the other documents actually kicked off asynchronously. We're going to come back here. A new business case manager went and did something else. Now they're coming back to this record, and they see that they have some completions, but there are still some in progress. We'll refresh here, and they're all done. So this is really, truly a drop-and-go process. New business case manager isn't going to click refresh and just wait for it. They're going to go do something else, and they're going to multitask. So let's go in, and we'll show you. So we built a block, and it's just a common framework for us to add participants to. So we'll go into the block, and you can see that from that application, we built one participant. We had one application, one participant is built. We can go into there, and the new business case manager is going to, this is part of their checkout then. They're going to see we pulled some basic, this is a test case, so the minimum amount of data was entered on these applications. But you can see we built some details, application type. We're going to have coverage amounts. The extraction model, in fact, is extracting about 70 fields. But our new business process, we don't use all those fields right now. They enter some of that data into our policy administration system, but just the basic fields to get us moving in the pipeline. So now we can check the requirements. These are all pre-risk requirements, applications and any type of endorsement, illustrations, and a producer report. And then you can see the associated documents that triggered those requirements to be built. Now our naming scheme shows you the doc type in the name, so they're able to do a quick cross-check that that was the correct doc type and the correct requirement. The documents will be able to come in. We use the proposed name, proposed insured's name, and we can check out and make sure that the correct doc type for that document was created and that it created the requirement that was necessary. We're not done yet, though, because we could have had some issues with the classification or extraction model itself. So they're going to come in at the case level. Anything that fails is going to get parked at the case level. And this is our human in the loop. New business case manager is going to come in here and see it didn't fall out of classification because I see the doc types. But you can see no name. I couldn't find a name on this e-signature document. So they're going to go into it and ascertain whether or not that was true. It would be very odd not to have a name on an e-signature document, but you can see there is a name, but this is a test case, and you see a little bit of noise in that field. That was enough to distract the extraction routine to not pull that name. So the idea is the new business case manager would go back in. That's the end of the demo. The new business case manager is going to go back in and rename the document. We have a move facility built at the case level where they can move that then to the actual participant that it should have been for. And that is how we're handling the reconciliation at the end of the process. I think the main point is that the new business case manager, it starts and begins with them. They're the ones controlling which document they're going to drop into the pipeline for which case, and that's how we isolate it to a case. They're also doing this checkout at the end, and they're the final say. This doesn't move forward to the pre-risk processing until they've done this checkout and validate that the information pulled correctly. Didn't win. Perfect. So we'll just kind of reiterate some things. Classification first. Classification is what drove the structure of our pipeline. It really, as the classification model evolved, so did our process modeling. We were able to isolate the safety net, based on some of that structure. I'll speak to confidence thresholds because we talk about that. If you do like the training thing, it's not like a one-to-one. Like we're not uploading one document, something went wrong, let's have a user task in the process model, let's have them reconcile it right now. That wouldn't make sense for this pattern because we're processing lots of documents. If you thought about a 300 participant case, that's a lot of documents to sit and wait for the pipeline to have a person reconcile it. I'm not using confidence thresholds. We have built in basically those safety nets. That is my confidence threshold. In the future, we may incorporate some of that in there. But the traceability and compliance, as you saw, we have doc types in our classification model. We have doc types in FileNet. The file name has doc types in it, and they also have a doc type associated with it. So we have this traceability, these variables, able to check those out. And in the future, like I said, when we put in some of the reconciliation processing that we want to, that will utilize DocCenter's reconciliation common functions, we'll improve the accuracy. Right now, it's manual. If a document falls out, it's our job to go in from technology, reconcile the document, and then hopefully it's learning from that, right? The extraction, I say it here, but I'll be honest. Extraction focused on just moving the participant forward, that is true. I think that's valuable, but we are extracting more data than we're using. It's really more mapping focused on business value. So the extraction model, when we used DocCenter to actually build the extraction model, we dumped in, we uploaded the document. It told us how many fields. I think it's pulling, 70, or really I said 70 fields. We're not using all those fields, just enough to get it through and started in the new business flow. However, that data will be valuable when we go to the next phase, and that will be where we take that data, and the new business case manager won't have to go into the policy administration system and build a record. We plan on having the data from the application drive that, and that will automatically update into the policy administration system. As Mokshit mentioned, handling the unknown documents, that was really a key safety net, in my opinion, because when the business came to us, they were the ones basically saying, I don't want my new business case managers having to look at a document, not know what it is. As I said before, they want us to take the first shot at it. We are using the PII extraction. It's not necessarily just for handling unknown documents. It's for any document that we're not extracting anything else from. Illustrations, applications, producer reports, that we all have an extraction sub-process model built. But for everything else, any other form, the DocuSign one, and anything else, we are using the PI extraction so that we can name that file accordingly. And building records. You saw us build records using the application data. We scraped off the illustration ID from an illustration in the packet. One thing I didn't show was the producer report. Producers send in, with every packet, a producer report, specifies their agent code and their commission and their payout option. So we build a producer which is associated to that entire block. And human review. I do like this statement. Human review is a feature, not a failure. They're not reviewing failures. They're basically, the human in the loop is just part of the workflow. It's a collaborative relationship between the new business case manager and the pipeline. They're able to go in, because they have the final say on whether or not something processed correctly and when it's ready to go to the next phase. That is really the human in the loop. Testing strategy. I do list some things here. One thing that was key for us is this idea of using realistic test data. I'm sure you all, if you're developers and maybe some testers, you've been out there and you go to look for testing something and you've got dummy documents and you've got, oh, this person's name is ABC, EFG, right? I didn't want that. So we went to our QA team and we talked about realistic. What does it look like? Two things happened out of that conversation. The first was that we got our business involved, and they built the packets for our UAT, but we also use for unit testing and for QA testing. The idea is I don't want to get to the point where I was using test documents. I know we don't want to use production data, obviously, but it has to look like production. And so the other thing that came out of that conversation was our QA team, our partners, built a pipeline that will, it's the start of it. We started with applications. So I basically deconstructed a PDF, a form, and put it into a spreadsheet and went to them and asked them, I would like you to take this spreadsheet, put it into our testing pipeline, and automatically fill a fillable PDF. And within the week, they were demoing it. It was the coolest thing, and it really improved. We timed what it took a user to actually fill that out, and it's 20 times faster per application. He gave me some metrics, and it was incredible, like 67% effort reduction, right? So that was incredible, and what we're going to do with that process going forward is we're going to onboard any new forms in that manner. We're going to add a new tab to that spreadsheet for the form, and our QA team is going to build out the automation to populate it. Now I have a facility where I can generate 20, 50, whatever I need, different variations of that form to help train the model on that new form. So I thought that was a big step for us, and I'm super excited about what they're doing for this project. And lessons learned. I was going to tell a do-it-yourselfer story about, right, like read the instructions first. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, we don't do that. And of course, when I installed, I don't have it up here, but when I installed DocCenter for the first time after coming back from Appian World, I just installed it and we started using it. Didn't realize that it actually has like common routines that you can use. So when I installed 3.1, when we upgraded, read the instructions, and it was like, oh wow, look I don't have to like mess with the JSON. I don't have to clean that. DocCenter's doing all of it. It's actually really slick, and in order to really use the reconciliation process, you should use the functions that they have. So that was really the biggest lesson learned. I didn't have it on here, but another key thing is the human-AI partnership. Getting our new business case managers and their manager to buy into this idea that AI is not going to do your job for you. It's doing the mundane stuff that you don't like doing, right? Like breaking up a document. I did it before testing, and it took me an hour to do one participant to break it out. And so you hear Moksha talking about going from an hour to 5 minutes, and that's true. We've taken the workload off of that new business case manager and put it on the pipeline. Now all they have to focus on is reviewing the data and moving it along the pipeline. Now what we've shown here is not just for multi-life. It's a set of patterns, really a reference pattern. We may not be able to drop this pipeline in for another line of business at Pacific Life. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to build it for multi-life. But the pattern is there: classify, extract, and build. And we've also set it up where this pipeline could be run headless. We don't need an action at the case level. We could be consuming data from Kafka, from S3, from AWS. We have a web API for other things that we're working on. So there's other ways to get this and trigger this pipeline, and that is a feature that we want to work on, make it a more common framework. And that's what makes this powerful. Going forward, these patterns don't end here. They create the foundation for where we're headed next. And that's the vision Rama is going to walk us through.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Let's talk about the fun stuff, audits. Right, come on. All right, looks like it needs auditing. Come on, there you go. All right, so my name is Rama Ravipati, and I'm a senior architect in Pacific Life. So basically, I'm going to talk about the audits, right? Our life division has it accumulated a lot of workflow systems, and we have a lot of processes that conducts basically every workflow step in overall policy creation, policy generation, and all these other data entry stuff that needs to be done on any policy, right, basically. So it's basically heavily manual work, right? Everybody do the data entry. Like we have a lot of vendors doing it. We have like an employees doing it. So we cannot audit everything, basically, right? That takes a lot of resources, and we don't want to do that. So that's where we're gonna set up some sampling percentages, like which one is critical, what are the forms that needs to be audited 100%, so that we don't issue a policy or something wrong with how much money it's going to be, right? So basically, that's why we need audits. Right? We want a lot of people to review it on whoever did the data entry and stuff like that. So we do have thousands of tasks or forms that needs to be audited, right? And we we have a lot of people. Usually, whenever there is human involved, usually our tendency is to go with whatever I know. I want to audit the form that I am comfortable with, not everything that is generated in the system, right? So we're trying to solve a lot of issues, where with our centralized audit platform, right? We pretty much intake all the forms, all the tasks across multiple systems, and we centralize that into one platform, which is we built in Appian, actually. So as part of that, we generate the sampling and we assign the task as well, right? And no more cherry picking, so that everybody will be working on all the tasks. They should be comfortable with whatever the task generated in their specific work streams, right? Next. So this image pretty much just describes what our process is, right? So we do have a lot of, as I said, we do have a lot of systems and a lot of content repositories where we get documents, every document that we receive and every document that is data entry by vendors or employees, they need to be audited by different levels of auditors. So even though we want one auditor, even though it is audited by one auditor, it will be sampled for a second level of auditor, because we want to catch high critical forms, as well as we have compliance boundaries, and we have contractual obligations to show these metrics, right? Because we want to audit how our vendors are doing, how our employees are doing, right? Because they will be contractually obligated. So this pretty much our audit application, it has different pipelines feeding from different systems, and our business just throw a little bit more context to it, saying that, hey, we want to audit. Basically, we want to differentiate if the auditor is a vendor, if the auditor is an employee, and if the auditor is a vendor, we want to differentiate based on their company's compliance on the previous years and stuff, right? So if the vendor is doing good, maybe they want to reduce the sampling percentage, as well as if the auditor is a new guy versus an experienced guy, so we want to sample those as well, right? So basically, as I said, there will be sampling done, right? So what we are trying to achieve with what John and other Pacific Life teams built using AI DocCenter, right? Basically, period. It's 100% auditing, right? The reason is maintaining these sampling percentages across these applications, right, based on forms, field criticalities, and vendors, and employees, tracking all of these guys across multiple systems, which makes us vulnerable to multiple failures, right? On a fun Monday, we receive a call saying that, hey, our processors didn't get audited the X number of percentage. I mean, it will be done a little bit later, but but the thing is, since there will be so many points of failures, right, it will be easy to fail, right? What we are trying to achieve, we want to audit every transaction. Basically, we are taking away the complexity, right? Taking away the sampling percentages. We want to, whatever tasks completed by data entry or any other workflows, right? We want to audit that using by leveraging AI. Right? So you guys can ask, like, if we want to audit 100%, like, it's going to include, you're going to need a lot of resources. We want to leverage AI to do that. How do we do it, right? We want to leverage AI for, like, as Randy was explaining in the other demo. We want to set a confidence score on our AIs, right? If it passes those confidence score, then we don't have to audit them. How do we achieve it? Then, like, I'll go over in the next slide. But if the task or any form, if it doesn't meet the expectations, then we want humans to be taking over those audits, right? So real-time validations, like, it will reduce after the checks. So let's go. This is the fun part. This is our solution, right? We have, as I said, like, we have, like, a lot of pipelines built in Kafka, Snowflake, like, you name it. Like, we got a lot of things, like even AD integration, SailPoint, like, and all this stuff, real time, right? So just because, like, we want to understand, the audit applicant should be able to understand, like, who did the audit, and what are the forms, and what are the fields inside that audit, and what are the criticalities of the field, right? For example, there's the dollar amount, and my vendor, like, can I just go and just reduce 1 0, right? It's going to be a big issue. So we want to, like, pull all the documents, and the way we want to achieve is we want to each form will be data extracted by AI, and that form will be reevaluated by AI, another AI, and we want to reconcile both those elements, right? Both the data fields, and then we want to apply business rules on top of it, right? Where, like, if a simple SSN, like, it has to be in certain format or something like that. If, like, if we are expecting certain broad cases, like, where the percentage of dollar amount should be, like, within the certain range and stuff like that. So all these business rules, we want to apply that on top of the whatever is extracted by the AI, right? And then what do we do with, like, after it is validated and after it is, like, validated by the business rules? How do we show them to the admin systems, right? Like, because we are extracting fine, like, but we have to, ultimately it's going to end up on the admin systems where the work is done, right? So we're going to build that record in Appian, and we want to, like, push those updates to the admin system if there is a need for changes, right? Usually, like, most of the data entry folks are really good, and, like, the error percentages are really low because we are contractually, like, letting them, you have to meet these error rates, right? Like, you cannot go over, like, X number of errors per certain number of cases, right? So, and if there is, like, as John was showing earlier, if there is any kind of exceptions or, like, an anomalies, and if the AI cannot do it, that's when we want to get the human in the loop and audit those. So what are we achieving, right, with this? We basically, like, audit about 14,000 data entry tasks, first pass tasks, like, every month. That's how big our volume is. This is after we sample, like, on whatever the task generated, right? So it will be a significant reduction in our manual effort. And basically, like, if we're going to achieve our sampling percentages to 100%, right? Where every task will be audited, and every form will be checked by 2 layers of AI, right? So if needed, like, then only the humans will be able to, like, just audit it if needed, only if needed, right? That will increase our SLA performance, right? Where we don't have to wait for somebody to actually, like, log in and check and audit these forms, right? So, as I said, like, we want to do our biggest goal is, like, that straight through processing for clean cases. As I said, there will be only certain minimal number of cases that will be usually like, somebody made a mistake or something like that, right? But we are waiting for all the other good cases, like, where they can be just speeded up. I mean, just like, the workflow doesn't have to wait for somebody to actually to take a look and say, hey, this is good, right? So basically that's our main goal, right? We want to do straight through processing, and we want to achieve faster audit cycles. With that, I'll pass it over to Moshe.
Thanks, Rama. So let's land this, right? Before we wrap over here, I want to zoom out. What we built here is bigger than one use case. It's an enterprise pattern. Composable AI pipelines that extract, revalidate, shape, that can evolve independently. Targeted human oversight, not humans are the glue. Record-centric integration, so everything is traceable, testable, and auditable. And platform-managed AI and doc services, no custom model hosting, no brittle workflows to maintain. And that's what lets us scale safely, faster change without losing control. And that directly supports our future objectives. Reduce the manual effort, data entry errors that Rama just talked about, push audit coverage toward 100%, scale ops without adding more complexity, and reduce the end-to-end SLA. The key is that we are not betting on one model. We are betting on a repeatable architecture, a reusable process model that absorbs the change without breaking the business. And maybe most importantly, the next time someone says it's just one PDF, we can finally say, cool, we got that. Thank you.